Good evening and welcome to the Obelisk. Tonight's guest is the illustrious Jared Murphy. Jared is a self-experimenter and field researcher of ancient technologies and lost history. He's traveled the world searching for evidence of advanced ancestors and high technology. That's the whole intro. There it is. That's Jared. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming.
It's you again, Jared.
Wait,
you again.
Newman.
From here, I'm sending you a drink from the dark end of the bar.
Send me about 10 of them.
Is it a smoke-filled room?
Yes,
Vape-
it's
vape
cloves.
filled. Vape filled.
Let's go back to the 20s. It's cloves.
Oh, that's great. That means it's definitely on the down low, and we're in a speakeasy, see?
So, all right, since it was my bad with your bio, can you give us an abbreviated version?
And
Because
they're called
Lord-
Breathe Easies now.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
No mask. Breathe Easy.
Oh,
That's awesome.
yeah, because if we were not in a period, knock on the door 3 different special ways to get into the speakeasy. If it was a modern speakeasy, are you supposed to be in here? And then we could take off our masks. I like that.
Yes.
So the basic intro. So I spent almost what started out to be 4 years ago. I was going to write a book, and it was going to be about restoring the oldest mummies on Earth, which happened to be, at the time, it's known that the Paracas of Peru, these elongated skull mummies, are naturally preserved to at least 9,000 years old. And I thought a great premise for a book that now people are prompting me to write was going to be different governments reanimating the oldest mummies on Earth, because the technology had reached that far. Yet the mummies they were reanimating would have access to shadowy memories of ancient high technology on the planet. And I get one day into research, and I hear about this guy, Colonel Percy Fawcett, who has, of course, been played by Brad Pitt in The Lost City of Z, and he disappears in the Amazon. But before he does, he's last seen at this Amazonian village, to which day 2 of research, which turns into a 4-year, 3.5 years until I get my publisher, Olaf Phillips, and then another 6 months of editing and another 60,000 words, ends up with my book coming out this year. Well, now last year. And what happened is they said, this is called terra preta. It's an engineered soil. It's the richest growing soil on Earth. It's been looked at for 100 years by soil scientists. We don't know how to make it, but it's super interesting because it has piezoelectric properties. It filters heavy metals. It filters carbon dioxide. And we estimate that there's an area twice the size of Spain in Brazil of this engineered soil. And well, that's neat. Let's go look for Colonel Percy Fawcett and where he disappeared. And as a self-experimenter, as far as a bio goes, I played the violin seriously till I was 21. I've been into sound and frequencies and self-experimentation, which really means it and includes, I was lucky enough to be a part of Wim Hof's first class in the United States. He's the Iceman. He's considered superhuman. He has been proven by many collegiate and academic environments to have conscious control of his immune system. I've experimented with that, being paleo, movement, like Erwin Lacour, Ido Portal. I'm a climber. The idea is always to be learning. I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was 5 and tell stories. And I guess by the time I was in 2nd grade, my grandfather had been a tank commander. He landed with the 7th Armored. He was in a tank at D-Day and was in a tank through Belgium and Holland and back to France for Battle of the Bulge, and was in a tank all the way to Berlin. And I was fascinated with history, starting with my grandfather being a tank commander like Brad Pitt and Fury, which is ironic that I now mentioned 2 movies with Brad Pitt. But that's a first.
I'm sensing a theme here.
At least it wasn't Nick Cage.
All right. So I like that. So what basically happened was I start doing this research and start connecting that, cymatic polygonal construction, where people are like, okay, waves and frequencies are connected to these buildings, that they're canceling earthquakes. And I start doing this research on this engineered soil, and I find that the identical terra preta is in North Africa and South Africa, and it all just kind of connects. I've just had this curiosity where I don't know how many, I don't want to out myself as a complete nerd, but I don't know a lot of people that were reading quantum mechanics philosophy at 17 for funsies, and I just have an interest in spintronics and just where we're going with just everything from solid state hard drives to nano technology like Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Near. How does it fit into our future? And I've just had a big curiosity for all these things, and I can't help but get into it. So when I started
Plus,
on
you
the
you
book,
do like a pinch of the macabre too,
just so
to
much.
round it out, baby.
No, like when you think it's a joke where you soft off screw the red pepper and you let people pour it all out, you can just dump it, baby. Dump the whole bag.
I'm getting hot.
Yeah, that's exactly why we're doing this show, Jerry.
I think I'm just going to hang up right now.
We always do this.
It's getting hot in here.
Okay, back to you.
Jazz hands. We could do half the show listening to her just maniacally laugh.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
You guys.
What we gonna do tonight?
Jared, get back on track. Right? I'm sorry.
Okay.
You got me all wet with that liquid.
Stop with the wetness.
That's glycol. And as far as wet goes, it's very snowy outside. I don't know what else she could be referring to in the dungeon of thoughts.
It was 70 here today, by the way.
Oh my gosh. So it's hey, our temperature is up. It's a solid, I think when I walked in the door, 1 degree.
Ooh.
So it's up like 13 degrees.
Good old Minnesota.
Where Minnesota? Okay.
I am currently in Minneapolis and broadcasting from Minneapolis. So in the heart of a number of unsocially correct conversations.
That's where Ren
You're
lives
in the heart of Somalia.
Yeah. Well, at least there's good portions of the city. But Jerry, what was that last question?
No, I said Ren lives up in Minneapolis. I don't know if you bumped into
Ren Collier.
Ren Collier.
I'm so sorry. Who?
His name is Ren Collier. Friend of the show.
It's all right.
Cool.
Ren's awesome.
I can't know everyone, but maybe I want to know Ren.
He's in the circle, you figure.
Yeah, there's like it's like we get closer together and we all start to have our little glow sticks that go off.
Doesn't that mean you're CIA? You glow in the dark?
Oh, that's great. Scratch
Only
and
his
sniff.
Penis.
Mm-hmm. Scratch and sniff espionage.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going. You'll smell strawberry.
Ooh. As long as it's not poo.
That's just a naughty flavor. Yep.
That's the backroom stuff.
They call it I made a messy.
Oh.
It's called 2 toddlers and a Crayola.
Oh Lord. And complimentary toilet paper.
Yep. I ate all my Crayola. Put your head down like you do for the rest of the exercises, Ralphie.
Okay. We've derailed you enough. Lord have mercy.
I will take your mental canvas and Jackson Pollock the whole thing.
Ooh.
Oh, Jerry's going dark. This is getting dark.
I turned my light on just for a second. I'll leave it on if you want.
Oh, no. Go. No. I can see you. I like the mood setting. Don't feel free.
Yeah, the mood setting's sexy dark like that.
Oh, crap. Mine's way too lit then.
I know, baby. You need candles.
You got shower.
What about your lighting? I have the same. I have the same 1/4 inch of your face over here again. Where's your video? Huh?
Come at me, brah. Come at me.
Oh, hey, brah. Hey, brah.
Okay, so
chocolate me, brah.
Let's get back. You're terrible.
So yeah, I think that it's been really fun. So what happened was 3.5 years of research go by, and I was able to meet my publisher, Olaf Phillips, the publisher of Paranoia Magazine, Paranoia Podcast. He's actually doing 2 new podcasts. Olaf, of course, wrote the Secret Space Program and has been on a number of shows. A significant amount of shows. He's done work with Scott Walter and been on as a ufologist and expert over the years quite extensively. So I was lucky enough to meet him at Contact in the Desert, and we became, it just turned out to be a good fit because I came at this at an angle that no one had, which was with my background in historical remodeling. I started in a very old neighborhood in St. Paul, near Summit and Grand Avenue, which is where the Capitol is, and our local cathedral, and what is considered one of the most intact avenues in the entire country for old 1800s style homes. And so I thought I thought that restoration remodeling would be easy. And so you have a different eye for engineering, and because I wasn't just painting, I wasn't just replastering walls, it was knocking out this structural load, and how do you move that weight, and how do you add something new with something old. And so there's a different discernment that comes in when you look at construction and engineering. But I've had an interest in earth homes, concrete built form structures. I'm a big fan of container homes, and I just had been at it for a while. But when Olaf and I got started, the issue for me right away is, if there are biochars, engineered soils all over the earth, that's not very popular or going to be explainable. Especially, well, first off, some of the carbon dating has said, well, okay, well, some of the tests have shown this soil is at least 8,000 years old. There's also a problem with it. There's a professor currently in Kansas that's been researching it that shows that the soil has this weird ability to literally maintain itself, to repair and or expand. And the issue is that there are different versions of the modern commercial version is called biochars. And what drew Olaf to the book, and for what ultimately became our contract, and then we got started on working on producing, was that it's not the only location. When you have the exact terra preta in Northern Africa and Australia, right now it's really popular to get on shows and talk about the Australians, and that the Egyptians were in Australia, that the Egyptians were in the Grand Canyon, and that the Egyptians definitely made it beyond what we think of their travel pattern. But what hasn't become on the radar yet is terra preta itself is in Middle Australia, and it is in these 3 continents. But then there are other biochars, which I keep trying to get to, is an engineered soil made up of different biomasses. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's not a matter of just composting a bunch of old things. It's a matter of getting a particular carbon print, but it's not even that simple. But part of it is you're burning, say you and I, we're all going to open up an apple orchard. I use that example. You would want a particular biochar with a certain kind of other woods or other biomass, and they would burn that and create this carbon print that would be helpful and healthier for these trees that we're going to grow. Or if we're going to grow corn, or if we're going to grow wheat, there are different commercial biomasses that fractionally mimic ancient biochar. And so the question is, no matter what, right now we're digging up Göbekli Tepe in Turkey for 44 years. It's 5% dug up, and there are 6 other tepes. And everyone now knows, it's becoming more well known, that they're like 12. And when I started my research, now it's scrubbed, like the Mandela effect. But they had shown they had found carbon that had dated to 36,000 years old at Göbekli Tepe. But we're not looking at the general soil we find all over the earth. There is a soil chart, and there are scientists that are like, wow, it looks like fire. They're like admitting on some level that fire played a role in creation of this soil. But what they're not going out there and saying, because Göbekli Tepe resets modern, they're still struggling and saying Neolithic man, in between all the hunting and gathering, decided to build a megalithic structure, and they just only party there when it was a solstice or something. They're still not admitting that Göbekli Tepe represents one of many, many, many probably cities. And even though Dr. Robert Schoch and everyone else is looking at the Egyptian, at the weathering around the Sphinx, around the different areas in Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo and Tiwanaku, they all show indications of much further antiquity. And now, if you have a biochar that's on every continent, that shows it could have supported a much larger, not just for growing food, but for filtering heavy metals and carbon dioxide. If we were a much more developed society, we have a problem. It's difficult. And from there, 4 years later, here we are, and finally we're chatting on the Obelisk.
Oh, the wonderful obelisk. So just to be clear, the biochar is different from vitrification or vitrified.
Yeah, so
soil.
it's
Okay.
yeah, it's not a combo of a bunch of dinosaurs are in the forest, a meteor hits, oh crap, everything burns and falls down and decays into a random pile that makes the perfect growing soil. No, one of the indicators for later cultures that came along too is the existence within these biochars of pottery at all layers, and it can be a couple meters thick. Uh, it could be 14 or 15 feet thick, 16 feet thick, versus even 3 feet. So I shouldn't switch between meters and feet, but I thought that'd be funsy here just for a minute. But yeah, it's interesting, and that's on its own. Okay, well that's one fact. But then I got fascinated by Michael Cremo's Forbidden Archaeology. And again, it's not his finds. It's 10 years of research looking at paleoanthropological evidence of the minute we decided to take archaeology seriously and not just go dig up cool statues for your Victorian mantle. They find that, okay, well, here's the red crag. Here is human fossils that are actual anatomically correct humans. Well, this layer is 5 million years old. And then Table Mountain, which is Cremo's favorite site, that's during the gold rush. They find fully intact humans that were not buried in situ, that were through an intrusive burial through a layer of intact slate, but they were literally ancient. So we're talking about 20 to 60 million year old humans. And then there are footprints and there are other things, and not things that happen through, like you said, a quick bake of the soil. It appears to be 150 million years old, but truly ancient antiquity of man itself, all the way back to the Klerksdorp spheres, which are in South Africa, that are alleged, from the layer of earth that they're found in, these little spheres. They have machining around them. Even the television did stories on them in the 90s and the late 80s. They are 2.5 to 3.5 billion years old. And that there gives us a really broad band to discuss stuff for the next, how long you guys got?
90 minutes. So you were talking about,
Hurry.
You mentioned Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe.
Up next.
Did you hear that a monolith showed up there? One of those silver monoliths.
I didn't. Did they right at the site?
Nearby, I read. Not that I'm putting any credence into that. I mean, I think it's all nonsense.
Oh, I think I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
I'm pretty sure it's some kind of art. Yeah.
The last sighting, right?
The last sighting. It's some kind of art project, but I thought it was funny.
I thought it was funny too. I did. I thought it was. What's funny about the one that finally made the news that was in the California desert is that somebody wanted it to be news like 4 years ago. It was installed like 4 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. It's been there forever. They're like, I can just picture. They're like, no one liked it.
And then once they find it, they moved it, right? They took it down.
Yeah. Then they were like, screw you guys. I'm out. You finally noticed. There's an artist group in the Twin Cities that froze a Neanderthal. They dressed up a mannequin and made it look very much like a realistic Neanderthal, and actually stuck it in a very popular Minneapolis park called Theo Worth. And then they gave, once you went out and found it, it's a very beautiful park. It's we have so many within the Twin Cities, but this one has a matching partner. They froze a female partner to this Neanderthal. So you got this really, Gronk looking Neanderthal at one end of the park, and then everyone was supposed to meander around the park, of course, in the below zero weather now, and find the female companion that's also in a frozen block, fully sized. So that's a thing that's going on right now. So, I mean, it's one thing to find a metal monolith, but you go find a frozen Neanderthal somewhere in the forest.
It's kind of like a scavenger hunt.
Yeah. And that, I don't know if they're going to do that this year. We used to have Minnesota's pretty well known for their winter carnival, and there's a winter medallion hunt. And I don't know if they're doing that or not, now that I think of it. But anyway, sorry. That's, I digress.
It's all good. It was my question.
So yeah, this is, This has been really fun. I've been looking forward to being on your show, so I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. Because I love to talk about how it wasn't aliens.
Yeah, so therein lies the issue. As I'm going along and doing this research, every now and then I would get dropped with this super sick feeling of, this is not the first time we did this. Not because I had an intuition, but because as you look at the technology in the ground and look at the constant sighting of high-tech non-military UFOs, the assumption is always, well, they're UFOs, they're from somewhere else.
Allegedly non-military.
Right, right. And there's the problem is that, Olav, as my publisher, he's a pretty great expert when it comes to stuff like this. And he'll solidly say all day long that the U.S. and our space program is about 100 years beyond what we see, not 70 or 50, but over 100 years ahead of the technology we're currently in possession of. And I don't doubt that, but like the Tic Tac video of a fully, something going off a weapons screen of an F-18 at least Mach 22 and doing the 0-point turns and actively jamming, like the colonel said, who was flying, of not giving away the technology, but saying that the maneuvers it was making and its ability to scramble a weapons locking system, irrelevant to being an active war, was something that we didn't have technology that we could duplicate. And I don't think he was saying that as a misinformation campaign, but there are too many people with credible witnesses of events with UFOs where, is it a foreign entity, or is it the fact that once you table everything from engineered soil to polygonal cymatic masonry and abilities like in our genetics, it appears, the short is, I think the whole premise of the book was that there's enough technology to say that these people had command of the atom. They had command of wave and frequency technology, irrelevant to moving giant blocks. They had engineered and terraformed the planet right down to the soil with piezoelectric properties for communication, not just for growing, but for connecting literally through what we look at now as technologies are these computers. I think what we look at as nature, quite a bit of it is biotechnology that we don't understand. I mean, we discover 3.5 to 5,000 creatures a year and have been doing it for 40 years. And that doesn't mean just funguses and bacteria, although it does, but it also means we missed something we thought was extinct, or we missed a bat, or we missed a bird, or we don't know everything that lives on this planet. And we thought Pando, that tree system in the United States, was the biggest living organism, and it turns out that it's a fungus, and it's a single entity, and it's huge. And so for us to assume that a spacecraft that, oh yeah, it's from another planet, and although I do agree that maybe anthropologically, maybe we're an interesting subject for things throughout the galaxy to come and look at these monkeys. But at the same time, it appears, based on the technology in the ground and based on all our myths and legends, that at least 50,000 years ago, there was a global civilization so not Younger Dryas, but there was an event somewhere between 50 and 60,000 years ago that put a city off the coast of Cuba 2,300 feet deep. And it's not the only place that's off that far deep, or like the Recot or the Eye of Africa, the Recot structure, that's 7,800 feet above water, but it used to be in the water. That event, I think, is what ended a global advanced human society, but it didn't end them. And when they recollected or came out of hiding, you have all these dynastic peoples like the Egyptians, the Aztecs, the Olmecs, the Toltecs, the Mayans, fill in the blank, maybe even the hairpin. And what we have a very ignorant curtain on Eastern. We don't have a good marriage between our understanding of what happened from India to China and Indonesia. Yeah, we know about Angkor Wat. But there are megalithic structures in Japan, and there are on mainland China, and that we have unexplored pyramids, rock cut ruins. Siberia has nano gold bits and parts that have been found. All of it adds up to either it's all military UFOs, which is, I don't think, possible. And it's not a misinformation campaign, I think, for the Air Force and the Navy to come out and say, look, yeah, we'd like the public's help last summer, and say, yeah, we've had a program looking at these and we don't know what they all are and we'd like the public's help. And so the reality is that either they're from somewhere else, or a very smaller portion of a lost ancient human culture collected up their old technology, continued to call this place home, easily come and go, and clearly can maneuver, jam, mute, disappear from our eyesight. And there are plenty of places on this planet to live, whether it's underwater, in rock cut, underground areas, or even forests, that it would be very easy for a high-tech society to live in. And when we see them, the first thing that people say is, well, look, they don't look like us. But again, if you command the atom and you command the human genome, you want to do 0-point turns in a Mach 30 vehicle. Well, maybe being shorter, white, and translucent with infrared black eyes that allow you to do a direct interface with your weapons controls and your flight system is an easier computation for the human body. So they just slip in and out of a body the way that we would wear a suit. And it's not that they're not human. It's not that they've evolved to be something other than human. They're just human. They're just, we go in for a nose job, they go in for a body mod that includes something that would work in that kind of machinery. And so when we see them, you got to think Rick and Morty going down to fix his battery, and they got to put on little antenna because, ooh, they're aliens.
To blend in, yes.
Yeah.
With the what were those boxes called?
We love Rick and Morty here.
The multiverse, miniverse,
the miniverse, microverse.
Your microverse is whack, and it's the size of a lobster tank. It's miniverse. You're saying
Miniverse.
that I missed my dad's funeral. I love that one. For everyone listening, Rick and Morty's the grandfather has a spaceship that has a battery that's really an actual universe that he puts in to run his space car, which is gratuitous because these people live in this miniverse and they think it's real, and it is real for them, but they stopped creating power for his car. And when Rick and Morty go in to check it out, he has to give them antenna to put on his head so that they know that they're aliens, which is hilarious.
The episode is called The Ricks Must Be Crazy.
Oh my gosh, that is absolutely one of my favorite episodes. It is painful to wait for seasons to come of Rick and Morty, but
I heard they've got 10 planned.
Oh, don't tell me. It's just so hard to wait.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, there you go. Sing that one twice. Did your halo straighten out when you sung that out?
It did. How'd you know?
I don't know. I couldn't hear your tail tapping on the floor.
Oh, Jesus. This is why I'm not interjecting. I'm trying to allow the show to be serious because it goes sideways with us so fast.
You know what's important?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, Jerry, go for it.
Jerry, please.
No, this is fascinating. I mean, okay, so I'm not saying I can't accept what you're saying. I mean, that's totally plausible. But isn't it also possible that, or could it be possible that there are also some, okay, first of all, I want to say they could be in Antarctica, right? Could they be hanging out down there somewhere? Which would kind of account for all the weirdness going on down there. Also, they could be human, but they could live in possibly another dimension or phase shifted, or is that just too crazy?
And just to tag team on what Jerry's saying, get into your thoughts on Antarctica, by the way.
So I shouldn't entirely out Gary for this one, but the host of Everything Imaginable apparently is going to be interviewing a family relative of Admiral Byrd. And it's, I think, the first time anybody's really had new info or new insight on Admiral Byrd's high jump, the operation that Olaf and I were just talking about this the other night on another show. And the issue is Admiral Byrd goes, and it is pretty clear that the German socialists left with a lot of their technology, and it very much appears that they flew directly from Germany with some in-flight refueling over Africa, and a good segment of some very brilliant Germans ended up in Antarctica and established a base, which Operation High Jump in what I think 47,
46 and 47, yeah.
which ended up with a large contingency for a scientific expedition to go and just do scientific expeditionary work, which of course turned to what we know is a large battle, which later was verified by remnants of things that were there. And the question is, was it just the German National Socialists there, or was it aliens? And the Admiral Byrd diary that indicates that there's a possibility that there was an entrance, a cave entrance, and also some descent into an ice, well, because there's kilometers of ice in Antarctica, and the issue is it was a large opening. A Byrd and another compatriot lower through it and see a number of different layers of things, and
That was
so,
Deep Freeze, wasn't it? That was Operation Deep Freeze.
yeah. So there's there, and then of course we have this very to compound this whole thing. We have Buzz Aldrin, I believe Bill Clinton, the John Kerry, and I think Barack Obama, and about 6 or 7, including I think a representative of the Holy Roman Church, all go to Antarctica within 6 weeks.
And the Russian Orthodox leader.
Yes, the head of the Roman Orthodox Church. They all go to Antarctica. Yeah, like, are they there just because they like to do Wim Hof and cold weather breathing?
It's just so weird. I mean, and Buzz Aldrin went down there. They summoned him down there, right?
Right. Yeah. And so why would you do that within 1 month if there isn't really exciting, untouched stuff? Because all this dynastic work in the last, here's why I jump back to 50 to 60,000 years. And you ask a really important question about why is it ancient advanced humans? Why is this? Because we'll start with most current and go backwards. One is we have the Sea Kings, the maps of the Sea Kings, right? We have the Reese map, which has become very famous for having the coastline of Antarctica in 1516. Admiral Reese, which is kind of like, as it was described to me by someone Turkish, a kind of a George Washington of Turkey. Admiral Reese is incredibly famous, but he's this admiral, and in the early 1500s, 1400s, they're collecting old maps of old maps of old maps. And as the cartography goes, nobody wants to smash up the greatest spaceship on Earth at the time, which is a ocean-going, any kind of man of war and or shipping vessel. I mean, everything's done by sea. And so here's a map of the coast of Antarctica with no ice, which we can't verify until American retired and active Air Force and naval people take some interest, and it gets deciphered. And then of course there's seismology that's done, at least publicly. We don't really get what Antarctica looks like till basically the 60s. And here we are with a map in 1516 that says, oh yeah, look, this is a copy of a bunch of maps. And what a lot of people don't know is the Reese map was a map of the world. It's a torn off section of that map. And what's also interesting about it, it has accurate longitudinal lines, which would not be possible from the time that map was published for 75-ish more years. And here we have either they got really lucky or they were copying things that had information on it, not just the coast of Antarctica, but the longitude being correct the way it was so significant on just this one. And there are many other maps that have these lost sciences and other things. For instance, Sumeria gets credited with being the first modern culture, Sumer. And there are the Babylonian Plimpton tablet, which shows the Pythagorean theorem and all of it basically about 1,000 years before Pythagoras gets credit. And so essentially, as they're describing it, in a teacher's aid. And then there's another one, the YBC tablet, which shows a base 60 spherical form of math that would be really good. If you're a vibrational frequency, high technology society and you work with eigenvalues, which is why is it that the Great Pyramid to ziggurats, things that were adapted dynastically, but things that are much, and ziggurats, some of them are not old, they were built in period in the time that we think by the Sumerians, but we have a lot of ancient buildings that use pi. Well, pi's most significant, I mean, one of the most significant things about it is it's an eigenvalue. You're using it for wave and frequency technology. And so all of these technologies, along with the maps, show that we have had a very advanced group of humans here. And that means that you can say, like you said, did they develop so far ahead? Like in 100 something years, we've gone from zero to, the technologies that we're literally communicating on right now. Is it possible for a prior ancient group of humans to, of course, go to nanotechnology, already have space and flight technology, already have either created or landed on the moon, traveled to other moons, established themselves on Mars, sent out satellites, whether it's the Black Knight satellite or whether it is other. I got the opportunity to meet and speak with Eric von Daniken a couple times, and he talked about at least 6 or 9 other satellites beyond the Black Knight satellite that are known, that are in our orbit, that are ancient, that represent some other earthly ancient high technology. But let's just say that that doesn't account for that. We frequently will get excited, or a news story that says, hey, we just got an FM signal to Earth and alien signal to Earth. Well, why isn't it we're growing bricks right now out of bacteria. We actually can grow bricks, their shapes, their geometry. And if you're going to travel to another galaxy, or have if I was a high-tech ancient human using 100% of my brain, or 90 or 80, would I create a satellite that could self-regenerate, that could repair itself because it grows, because it's not just a box of metal, it's an organic structure that can also, like, we just found microorganisms that don't breathe oxygen, that are actually non-oxygen based life forms in the ocean. But could we create a brick that is part of a satellite system that uses solar, self a propulsion system that would allow it to move through galaxies themselves, and as it sends signals back, could we pick up those signals? Could we be picking up signals from a lost ancient human society that is not here to receive that technology anymore? But that's I guess a side note. Right now, those people, why are they still here? Why are they still using what appears to be really advanced craft? What's the possibility that they can either move dimensionally or through wormholes? Or to answer that question, we need to talk to them, which is annoying. And at the same time, again, the jump, it's an easier, like the 100th monkey theory. Why are there pyramids on every continent? It's literally an easier jump to believe that through, although I absolutely believe we have collective consciousness. Collective human consciousness is a real thing. I do believe that we have genetic memories and we have the ability to connect with each other, and we're muted on it right now. We're kind of in a safe mode. But I do believe that collectively, is it possible that that they reached a level of technology, like in the Singularity is Near with Ray Kurzweil's work, that on a nano level they could replace biologically failing, well, could they just repair any mitochondrial DNA? Yes. Could they live indefinitely? Likely. And were they scavenging or a random creation of the planet? I don't think so. I think it looks very well designed. And as we look at all the pieces, it's pretty clear that a much more advanced human society didn't just figure out how to lift heavy stones. They were measuring and using these eigenvalues from not only earthquake control, but to cellular development. And whatever they developed and however they mutated or changed themselves, I don't believe that it's one happy-go-lucky society. I think whether they were hit by a natural disaster or a weaponized conflict, I always say weaponized disaster as in it wasn't anybody's fault that they nuked themselves. But the reality is that it's clear that they didn't agree at some point about something. And we have these converging points where humanity has one mystery, like they've now identified in mainstream science. Oh, there's 14% of our DNA that we can't identify. And approximately 50,000 years ago, Neanderthal and Denisovan mixed with humans. But we also have the Pracus, which we started with, and the Pracus have elongated skulls, and they only have one suture line in their skull and they have different foramen magnum, which means their arterial dissections that go into their brain that feed them are in different locations. Their neck is in a different location. Their body size is a different size. And not a single institutionalized university that calls themselves a university, despite soft tissue organics being found in mummies that are 3,000 years old. I got to have that conversation with Nassim Harriman directly, personally, in person, and they're finding organic ocular tissue and brain matter that's almost 3,000 years old. But the point is, these mummies are 9,000 years old and older, and not a single academic institution is picking up and doing the ancient DNA sequencing, because even from the shadow of the work that Brian Forrester gets credit for, no matter how the work was done. And I only say that because everyone's like, well, did he use a scientific method or how did he do it? It's irrelevant, because his work is showing that these people are from at least Crimea, which is the black, basically middle Russia, middle lower Russia, right? From Crimea, they left after something and said, I think they were the first Mennonite Quaker hippies that were like, everything we've done in technology sucks. Let's go get high, live on the beach, and make really cool textiles and fish. That's how I think they ended up from Crimea to Peru. But the reality is that those mummies, those bodies, those organics, they're not the only elongated skulled people on the planet. And it's up to us to do the testing, to do the very serious work that shows from the level of technology it would take to build polygonal construction, engineer soil, have these different genetic lines of humans, and the fact that we clearly have cities underwater, including Antarctica and the Arctic, and we know from the pole and magnetic shifting that they just were tropical environments at one point. We know that the story of us is much more complex. And we have UFO sightings that people like to talk about, like the battle over Nuremberg in the 1500s or 1600s. We have different sightings, not just today, but throughout time and history, where we're either constantly, like the Book of Enoch and Eric von Daniken, starting really this modern quest with Chariots of the Gods to say, look, we're either visited constantly, or these large superstructures were built by a society that lived through multiple cataclysms, dealt with weaponized attacks that with scalar weapons likely and other terrifying things. And they, at some point, failed to maintain a global society. They did fall. But I think that's a better place to start than we can speculate, did they achieve multi-dimensional travel or nanotechnology to the point where their consciousness could be literally in dust? I mean, that's possible, and that the need for a body is irrelevant, or that they live in either a multi-dimension or they live in a state of liquidity. That's a possibility. We don't have a really clear look at we don't have a clear fossil record. We don't have a remotely close to complete fossil record. But when it comes to the speculating on why Antarctica is a hotspot now, is it because of there's only one institution on this planet that has continuously, in the last 2,000 years, collected, at least at some level, within a secret level of the levels, has collected information that doesn't jive with what they preach, and that's the Roman Catholic Church. There is only one institution, and they are it. The Vatican Library, the Vatican Sciences Division, of whatever that looks like, whatever it is, the reality is that they have been collecting ancient lost things for almost 2,000 years. So what's there, what they have, At what point did modern governments get advanced enough to catch on? Was it just organizations like the Masons? Was it other Illuminati or other secret organizations that maybe grabbed one piece of the technology and well, I'm losing my ability. Somebody help me.
Democrafied?
I'll go with that. That's darker, and I like that.
Okay.
That they get one piece of the technology, they've made it into a secret. It's something important to them, but that's all they got. They got the one piece.
Right.
Wim Hof is sharing the techniques to control your inflammatory response, consciously control your immune system, and what he preaches, because I got to see him in person, is this is an ability we've all forgotten, and yet Tibetan Tomo is a system where you heat your body, but it's done in secret. It was a secret monk, secret thing that was done in a secret temple that was not meant to be shared. And that's an example of us mystifying, deifying, and having an ability that is actually helpful to every human being on the planet that wasn't brought to every human being on the planet for over 3,000 years. So I think that like Qigong is the mystification. I talk about Johnny Chong in my book, and this is a guy that could start paper on fire, could send and direct electrical current, and then the British filmographers that did go and document him, one of them actually came back and wrote a book about him, about Johnny Chong. And Qigong manifests differently in different people, but in this particular guy's case, it had these crazy visual, like starting things on fire, massive electrical currents. And one of the theories was not just, okay, it's not a theory about Johnny, but there are very scientific papers about the idea of nuclear cold fusion going on at the mitochondrial DNA. And that is very interesting because we don't really get how the human body works, let alone how it's connected to everything, why we have very different paranormal, some people call things paranormal, or we have collective dream experiences. I mean, you have the Sufis having collective dream experiences with 35 people, or there are books now current like The Power of Eight. And you have everybody from the Greeks to Carl Jung looking at synesthesia, where you have every human ability connecting, and we go, oh, that's a one-off, or it's a mutation, and about 25-30% of us have that. And what does that really do other than say, when you table everything, when you start tabling all the missing facts, that instead of having facts that fit your theory and throwing out the facts that don't, when you table all the facts, you have a very complex, high technology human society that could they have the ability to go interdimensionally? Sure. But are they still showing up, and are we seeing them? Yes. So if we don't get a handle we're literally standing in front of massive complexes, and we've done it now since the last fall, since the Younger Dryas. We're staring at the Great Pyramid. We're staring at polygonal masonry across the earth, not just built for earthquake, but for, again, not just, we don't have a complete structure. We don't know if we're looking at foundations. We don't know if they're like the Easter Island heads.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stuff at Sacsayhuaman and at Ollantaytambo and at these other locations like Lake Titicaca, at Tiwanaku are, bowled over in mud. And we're not looking at the full breadth and length and size of the megalithic structures that have been built and saying, okay, this society is at what layer? At how many times have they been dynastically quarried, used for people's towns and villages? Even the Egyptians were quarrying out the old temples and ruins, and right down to beyond the casing stones of the Egyptian pyramids. And then we have theories of geopolymers. And the reality is geopolymers exist in ancient times, because if you're a society that's built these giant structures, you have to repair and maintain them. So we keep starting with a narrative of, when did we know that they were built, and that, well, maybe they use geopolymers. And then the creator of geopolymers, Dr. Joseph Davidovitz, identifies geopolymers on the Great Pyramid, which were then backed up by a Yale scientist and an Egyptologist that are like, well, they're not everywhere, but there are geopolymers. Well, again, if you're maintaining, I do restoration remodeling. When you maintain a building, you have to repair it. And if it's been around for multi-generations and eons, millennia, tens of thousands of years, it's going to need to be maintained. And the question is just whether, was it a dynastic repair or was it a more ancient repair? And even that, even the Sphinx enclosure, the repairs to that structure itself in dynastic Egyptian times, when they were doing some early repairs, there's some black and white photos that now show up on I got to give credits to it. Ancient Architects. He does a great new video. It's not even that long. You should watch it because they had pulled away some of the stones and it showed the same weathering that all these geologists are agreeing. It could be tens of thousands of years old, the weathering around the enclosure, but the creature itself, the stone structure, shows some of the same weathering under the dynastic repairs, and so does some of the weathering show up in on the blocks around the Great Pyramid. And so we're really looking at, in dating all of this and in looking at the antiquity of man, only your imagination could run wild with when you start with, you have anatomically correct humans in the Red Crag. That makes them 5 million years old, anatomically correct. You have them at Table Mountain and you have them all around the world. You have a campfire site that Virginia Steen McIntyre in the 60s looked at in Hueyatlaco, Mexico, for archaeologists. Hands down, for sure, that site is 275,000 to 500,000 years old, for sure. And that means you have a human history that's either lineal, and we are at the highest level of technology we are now, or we are missing that chapter. And it, again, we just have to we can keep cycling through the question, and we should, as to how many things do we table technologically, externally, and then internally, like what we think are just natural, interesting quirks of our genes, and go, we seem like really badass superhuman machines. And we all have a hunch on it. We all have that, like Graham Hancock says, that amnesia. And yet we know there's something cool about each of us. We know there's something connective. We keep identifying flashes of it. It's not just, I reach this level of meditative understanding and then I go to the next level, and I maintain. I think each of us have either emergencies. We hear about the car flips over and a small woman lifts the car up and saves her kid, and we think, oh, that's a one-off. Well, no, that's going from like 0 to reactivating what would be a normal ability maybe 50 or 80,000 years ago for an advanced human that's using a good portion of its brain. That was one of the abilities it would have had, and then they get turned on. And I think some people jump start it through ayahuasca or peyote. They quick fire. And I think that's another way people kind of jumpstart these dormant superhuman abilities, but they're not dormant for some class of advanced human that's still here, I think.
Makes sense. Makes total sense to me.
But I will speculate on this all night long, well beyond your 90 minutes. We can.
Jared, so I have two questions here. One is, and I'm trying not to monopolize because I get you when I want you. And
that's true for everyone listening.
I know, we're always dancing. So I wanted Jerry to get in, but
don't worry about me. You can drive.
No, Jerry, I'm just on what you're saying. So why do you think there's so much? Now, we've all speculated on why there's so much kickback, because this is rewriting a lot of history. It's literally rewriting it with science. And
well, is it really rewriting it, or is it just ignorance?
Revealing it. It's revealing it. But that's my question is, in this day and age, when everyone's on with their science meme, right? Why is this so threatening? And so that's where I'm trying to get at with this question. And secondly, don't you think they have probably messed with that gooey DNA already of the mummies that have been pulled up?
So there's, gosh, I want to take it in reverse almost, but the short answer on the front end for the why is, I equate it back to that Vegas conversation that I like to use this analogy because Las Vegas did not want to teach people how to gamble for the longest time because it would mean that more people would cheat, they would lose more money. So freak economics of it in the early 2000s, they said, let's start teaching people how to play the games, because people were scared. They didn't want to walk up and not know how to play roulette, not know how to play craps. It was just too complicated and busy. So freak economics of it was that when they started holding classes at the casinos and people learned how to gamble, people were more willing to gamble because they knew how to do it. And that made them comfortable. And before you knew it, Las Vegas got to make more money because people knew how to play. They just didn't know how. And, you know, and they changed their paradigm. Right now, universities have boxes and boxes and boxes, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you got top men on the Ark working on it now, boxes of stuff. Universities, the British and Smithsonian and every museum that's ever gotten anything ever, private collections, you name it. There are plenty of pieces we could look at and study, etc. But right now, the idea is that if we admit, after charging $250,000 for your degree, that we were entirely and completely and utterly wrong, which we are, and I mean, they are not even jazz handing past this bull right now. It is just a dusted house of cards. And what's happened is they have put entirely their hubris on saying they were right. And not even everybody agreed. Like, take Darwin. I mean, we can have a whole conversation about it's 1859. It's not even a popular theory. And they get behind it when, again, these sites are showing anatomically correct humans in morphology. The idea of, we got really good. Look, anybody can get, once you focus in on something, you can get really good at it. And just looking at a bone and saying, well, this bone is an ancient human. And how do you know? Well, I'm looking at it, and that's morphology. And this is the earliest forms of archaeology, where you have to understand that their idea of trying to find buried graves was to stick a long rod with a hook on it and pound it through the dirt, earth, whatever. And if they, no matter what they crushed or broke through, if they pulled up a piece of fabric, they knew they were at a burial. That was archaeology. That's insane. And that's how they would identify. That's just one dumb thing about archaeology. But the reality is, you work with what you got. And so there's a lot of layers of people who don't get out in the field. They don't do any work. They scratch each other's backs. They write work from a desk. They don't look at anything. They don't want to go explore. They don't want to get out. And their entire careers, and grading millions of dollars of students' loans on what they believe, is based on this system, which jokingly is archaeology's paradigm shift at the rate of the death of one archaeologist at a time. And therein lies that answer, is that it's, I think, by the way, despite everything I'm saying, I want to make it really clear that I think archaeologists need to be given boatloads of money and be paid to not find things. Because right now, I've heard too many stories now from people in the field of, if you don't find a fact that fits the theories, throw out the facts. So I have seen, it's not just Virginia Steam McIntyre and Huitlaco, North Mexico. It is many paleoanthropologists, anthropologists, archaeologists. If they don't find something that's going to fit or support a ridiculous, ludicrous theory of Victorian men from 150 years ago, they throw out the facts. And I am encouraging these billion-dollar institutions to embrace the facts that they have buried within their own Raiders of the Lost Ark storage systems, and to be the university to say, we're going to change our paradigm, and we're going to pay the researchers to not find things we want, but find what's there, whatever it is, to actually say, we're the university that just opened up our vaults and found 50,000 facts that we didn't know we had. We have digitized our entire collection, and we're looking for citizen scientists like Sarah Parkak's group with Global Explorer, where you have 80,000 plus people volunteering to look at archaeological maps after she won the TED Prize about 4 years ago now. It's been 3 or 4 years, but she was using satellites, not LiDAR, with just LiDAR flying in airplanes and ground LiDAR. She was using satellites to find ruins under the sand in Egypt, and then Global Explorer came to be. And I do think that these institutions would experience a complete shift, and instead of being encouraged to be told, look, everyone's wrong about stuff. So I think that if they could get past the academic hubris and these individual egos and encourage kind of a glassed off kind of a instead of tabling the theories and become institutions that table the facts and let the theories come based on the tabled facts and let the debates, they would be more intense. They would be more fun. Hell, you could turn them into episodes for television shows. The amount of young minds and brilliant minds of all ages, truly brilliant, connected minds that could look at the facts that would be found people would be banging on these institutions' doors. Right now, they're hooked in the holy mysticism of the archaeopriests, is what they're called by Carl. There's anyway. The point is that archaeopriests, and it's a whole system of the religion of archaeology. And instead of that, if they would table these facts and just let the theories come, there'd be just crazy cool debates, and we could actually answer some of these questions despite military and government interference. The reality is that our society would move much further ahead if it wasn't on a conspiracy side, it would seem, we're not going to let you guys see or put them together, and we need you to keep having this central theory while you stand in front of a 747 and keep telling everyone it's not a 747. This pyramid is a pyramid for a tomb. It's not a, but you're okay.
So you're to control the public when there's a global narrative,
Yeah, and so let the sheep keep grazing, and then the second part of the question, which I was all excited to start with, which was repeat the second question for me, just so I get it in order.
Do you think that behind the scenes they're actually working with this gooey DNA?
Oh, yeah, I do. Okay, so there we go. So I think it started with organizations like the Roman Catholic Church, where not everyone within any organization knows what's entirely going on. I don't believe that for a second. You got plenty of missionaries and plenty of stories of the conquistadors coming to South and Central America, melting, killing, destroying, taking what they wanted. And you have right alongside it Latin American inquisitions that were literally digging up the bones of people they believed that were Jewish. They had inquisitions, and they dug up dead people to burn their bones because they weren't Christian. That's how zealot some of these people are. Doesn't represent all of them, but this is the organization that's boots on the ground, collecting any narrative, any written story, and it annihilated the Mayan and Aztec and what we know of the Andes and of those cultures. And that's not the only place that happened. It's an organized institutional elimination of corporate competition in the most imperialistic way. But I do think that there are higher ups in any organization or subsects that know what's going on. I think there's a reason when you're a Mason, and I don't mean I know anything about Masonic law or Masons as in the organization, but when you're spending all your time working on brick or stone, and then you see the complexity of a polygonal wall in the Temple of Delphi, in Greece, in Rome, when you start to see things that don't add up, and then you go to Egypt, and then you go around the world, and you're seeing, that's why the Spanish tried to destroy, like Sacsayhuaman and Cusco. They tried to destroy any indication of anything other than what was supposed to be their superiority. And that's not what they were finding in these polygonal walls and constructions. I mean, they put whole churches on top of them. And so the idea then is at some level, this is the only organization prior to organized modern governments that could have collected high ancient technology, because we know they're using the maps, right? We know the Piri-Reis map is being used. We know that they have accurate longitudinal and meridian lines that are way beyond their capability, and they're having these. I mean, if they have it by 1516, that means they already had them off maps in the 1400s and prior. And there is no way anybody, the least amount of time you could be in Antarctica with no ice, a kilometer or more deep, would have been 8,000 years ago. And Doggerland, which we've chatted about in from Ireland and Scotland all the way to mainland France, that was one giant area. And even 4,000 years ago, Doggerland had a lot of land on it, which wasn't just Doggerland. All around the world, I include a map in my book that includes all these places where there was significant amounts of land that were above water. So 8,000 years ago, post Younger Dryas, so post what's called the biblical flood, you still got a significant amount of land masses that are around that are being occupied and looked at. But we have clandestine or secret organizations that are collecting and then doing something with what they're finding. And I do think by the time we hit World War II, we have modern governments that are aware of these finds. I think that's an example of, like, we think of the Smithsonian and the ideas of giants and finding of the Phoenicians, Canaanites, Egyptians, Romans, Celts, whatever, fill in the blank, visitations, Vikings in America. I used to vacation where the Kensington Ruin Stone was found. And that was, not on the farm for anyone being particular, but
nearby.
Yeah, nearby at one of the mini lakes in Minnesota. But the actually, like Aaron and Moses. Anyway, irrelevant. But the idea that one organization goes from collecting and hiding and burning and destroying, but also collecting and using and re-engineering this ancient technology, totally plausible, because they were doing it right down to the maps and the math. But then governments at some point have to take over. When we're developing the hydrogen bomb, when we're coming to modern governments and the technology digitally to communicate or figure things out, I do think, based on what's been found from Russia to the United States to South America, that it's pretty clear that there's a reason Antarctica and the Arctic Circle itself, because we have stone spheres, megalithic stone spheres that go from the Arctic, to the south, and that's part of that cymatic network. And
concretions.
Yeah, that was a trendy volcano thing that we've discussed, that just for a while, volcanoes were putting out concretions that were hollow, made of, various composited materials, and then they just stopped making it. Volcanoes were like, we've done that for a few million years. Let's do something else, like just puke up lava, and then we'll just not make concretions anymore. But they'll be all over the earth in very odd places that there isn't volcanic activity. That's also an odd one. But okay,
the blinky board.
Yeah, well, make them work.
So what are your hypotheses on what caused the global catastrophe?
So
catastrophes, I should say. I'm sure there were more than one.
Yeah. So, and I've been trying to, actually, this is a new dialogue. Well, all of it's new, I think. Like we're saying, this is a new dialogue for everyone. I do think the Younger Dryas, the event that happened that we're calling the biblical flood, the event that's between 11.5 and 13,000 years ago. So there's a bunch.
One.
Yeah. So we got the one that Sumer discusses, that all the Joseph Campbell and the Power of Myth and general societal stories of a great flood, the great biblical flood, that is that Younger Dryas effect between 11.5 and 13,000 years ago. That appears to be either a meteor impact. Robert Schoch, Dr. Robert Schoch's one of the theories. Yeah. So there's the solar flare theory.
I've heard recently about a micronova, solar micronova, not a flare per se, but a shedding of the shell of the sun in a micronova format.
Interesting. One of my favorites was recently hearing about planetary lightning from Mars. that there was actual planet to planet electrical, like Mars walked across the shag rug and shocked Earth.
Sure.
Sort of.
Sure.
You know.
Groovy.
Right. Got you, bro. So take that, Venus. Zeus, they're fighting again. Sorry. So that's they're all possibilities. There's clearly a lot of this will not make people incredibly happy, but I've seen some solid evidence now about what we're calling the glacial. There are glaciers. Glaciers are real, but the extent of them, the height of them, and where they really rolled or didn't roll across our world and into the Americas, for instance, in particular into the Americas, I do think it may be a different program than what we were thinking. I don't know if the global ice map looked the way it really did, but were we impacted greatly? Yeah, because all the way, I know a good example is Egypt and Tanis, which used to be the capital of Egypt, or Kemet. And the Tanis was obliterated, and it appears to be a catastrophic event. It appears that now, and I have heard from geologists that vitrification through a high heat impact and cooling would cause vitrification, but the personality of stone over 10, here's the thing, the antiquity, we can't judge the age. Yes, we have optical luminescence now, OSL, but there's a possibility that these ruins are so ancient that they could flake, and what would appear on some of them to be vitrification are actually just the antiquity of the stone, truly, truly having laid there for tens of thousands of years in the sun, in the rain, in the snow, in the sun, in the rain, etc. And that is a possibility. But now, when it comes to disasters, like I said, we have a city off of Cuba that's 2,300 feet deep. We have the Recot structure, which is 7,800 feet above sea level. And we have Lake Titicaca at over 13,000 feet or 12,760 or something. It's way up there. But you have seahorses and salt water at Lake Titicaca. You have seawater at remnants of sea creatures at the Recot structure, which looks absolutely identical to what was described as Atlantis. But let's just say it isn't, but it was at sea level. And then you have a city off of Cuba that's 2,300 feet deep that was above water. And again, it's not like they built it 50,000 years ago and went, oh yeah, we're ready for this disaster now. Let's high five it and hit some high ground. And so, and the Bimini Road, I mean, there's places all over the world, but let's just say that there's another society, a global society, that's building with pyramids and all the structures we see everywhere. And the dynastic Egyptians themselves, as another pointer, say we have a dynastic culture that goes back 36,000 years. That's what they told Solon, who went back to the Greeks, because he was Greek, and he said, "Hey, I heard this story about Atlantis, and I also the Egyptians are telling me they have a king's list that goes back 36,000 years, and the Sumerians have a king list that goes back." They have a Diluvian and pre-Diluvian king's list, and they even say that on the king's list, and there's not just one. All of them pointing back to this one flood. But what if they're not actually referring to the flood 12,000 years ago or 13 or whatever? What if they're referring to the one that actually ended the global society? And what if that window is in that 50 to 60,000 window? And that includes the crater impact that's in Greenland, that one that's 19 miles in diameter, that we recently found. And now they're saying, I think it's wishful. Okay, we don't know. We publicly find out about it at this point, what, a year and a half ago, less than 2 years. I feel like we're all in a time warp with the sci-fi novel we're in.
Yes, it was last year, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and so they figure out, they say, look, the wall of fire that would have came from this, it was like 400 megaton bombs going off. The wall of heat would have easily just decimated all sorts of stuff. And they're optimistically saying, well, it could have happened as early as 13,000 years ago, but it could also be 65 million years old. Well, like the dinosaur killer, the Yucatan Peninsula.
Right.
And then we rarely talk. I feel like, even though it's known in geology, and if you're into impact theory, we have that huge crater off the southern coast of India, no, it's like just doesn't get the street cred that the rest of them get. And that one was one hell of a baby killer. That one was, the one off of India is just insane big, just like the one, all of them are terrifying. Yucatan, Greenland, and the one off of India, those three, not like there aren't others that are big, but these three alone, each one is a nightmare, and they hit the planet. And it's clear. Also, the other caveat is there are significant underground rock cut ruins, not primitive people, not period people, but these are people that were clearly in the past, over 10,000 years ago, had used significant underground structures to prepare for global and surface disasters. It's also shown in tunnels and rock cut ruins in the Andes Mountains. It's found in Turkey. It's all over Europe. There's connectivity. It's a whole structured system meant for saving during a structural hit of the planet on the surface. So not everybody would have made it depending on the impact point, but it's pretty clear that that was the case. So I do think it's not just the Younger Dryas. I don't think it's just, although not getting a lot of street cred, this 50 to 60,000 or airplay, this disaster, I think that really ended the global disaster in that time frame, 50, 60,000 years ago. That really is the source point, I think, for a lot of this global polygonal construction that we find from Easter. It's on Easter Island even. It's everywhere, including a stone sphere. That's the holiest thing on Easter Island, on Rapa Nui, is a stone sphere. That it's not the moai. It's again, the locals will point to a stone sphere that they have in a little corral, and it's no different than the ones in Costa Rica or the Arctic Circle or in China. All over the earth, there's these stone spheres. But I think that if we were to look at the society and say, is it possible now in the echoes of truths of the Hindu Vedas, do we have flying machines, the Vimana? Do we have wars between the gods and what describes as nuclear disaster? I think we need to respect those texts as much as we do biblical texts or Western philosophies or research, and really be serious about saying, look, it is very possible that the slivers of truths that we're seeing in these ancient writings are that at some point ancient people passed down and remember other more advanced humans fighting it out, including flying cities or not. It is clearly accurate descriptions of technology. We have those cities being dug up in India that appear that it looks like shadows, but they look like they were nuclear. They look like they were nuclear vaporized people in ancient antiquity. So it's pretty clear that I think that we could credit natural disaster with some of it. And at the same time, it's very possible that it could have been a weaponized, just let's go to town, let's party. And it got out of hand. And it's, I think between the two, the Recot structure, Lake Titicaca, the city off of Cuba, they point to some sort of crazy, dramatic hydrostatic plate shifting, some tectonic. There's a theory of that, a lot of water in the ocean gets under the plates, eventually builds up in a steam situation, and that the plates, like one of the plates or a few of the plates just blew, and that the water shifted the steam. But in a nutshell, hydrostatic plate shifting. Mm-hmm. So that's a thing. And then could it have been the impacts of, could have been a combo of the impact of these giant meteors? Could it have been something that flown by, or something we got too close to, or gravitational shift? Yeah, it could have been all that. I mean, geologically speaking, in a few billion years, what we think is not a fast magnetic pole shift, or like the flash freezing of woolly mammoths, and the things that clearly show Antarctica being a tropical environment. Next thing you know, everything's frozen. It appears to some people, but that's a narrative, not a fact. But the organics and it appears that they froze quickly, but I don't know if we even have the genetics down right enough to say, yeah, this thing flash froze. Is it that it flash froze, or did it fall down while it was winter? Did the trees, because we have petrified forests in Antarctica. There are petrified forests that are that predate the dinosaurs.
Right.
At least what we think when the dinosaurs were.
So, if you can trust carbon dating.
Right. And therein lies the issue. Carbon dating keeps getting more complex. It's not carbon 13, there's carbon 14. There's not just OSL dating, which can take a single granular crystal, almost nano size, and get a date out of it. But then was it exposed to sun? Are we compromised? Are we,
Right.
like you said, I mean, there's so many different, we don't know anything about lichen. And there is lichen, and they're like, that's really old lichen. And it's even petrified lichen on top of, and then there's more lichen on top of the dead lichen. And it's like, how long is this piece of rock gotten lichen on it? There must be like a Rosetta Stone one of these days that's going to show 2 blocks, like at Tiwanaku, where one's face down and the back of it is weathered to shit. And then you flip it over and it's perfect. And one of these days, we're going to figure out that if you combine 2 likes with a certain kind of all I can think of is that it would be a lichen issue with the type of stone with some sort of splitting and growth rate of that creature. And somehow I feel like that's going to be able to be dateable. So that's me currently wishfully thinking for us to be able to date some of this stuff.
It's interesting thought, though. Combine the organic with the inorganic.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be one methodology. I think nanoarchaeology in the future is going to be huge. I think, I watch them crush up roads, and you go from a road to a bunch of chunks to them grinding it down to pebbles to them dusting it to repurpose for new concrete roads.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now we look at that and go, there's no way on Earth in a million years we would ever be able to put that road back together. But quantum supercomputers and nanobots measuring every side of what was crushed and connecting them all back together would be possible. What would look like utter complete magic would be just simply a combination of taking a pile and saying, hey, what was this structure the last time it was put together? And I do think that with the amount of coring by dynastic peoples in the last few thousand years, combined also with, we have large megalithic blocks that drive me nuts at like Ollantaytambo, or at Tiwanaku, where you have almost zero excavation going on, where they're like, well, there's nothing really below this one layer. Well, there's a giant 100-ton megalithic block sticking out of it. Maybe there's something under it. And if it fell down from something, perhaps we should dig a little like 50 feet that way. Or why is this all mud and not soil? Where's the soil? What covered this structure? And that digging is not being done. So we have very practical methods right now available to us, literally common sense, unlimited some institutional budgets. And all we have to do is drop some egos and, boom goes the dynamite. We could be digging. But
we need a bunch more funerals for that, I think.
That's just kidding, everyone. Just kidding. But yeah, there was I talk about this in the book. I went to a lecture while I was writing by Dr. Melissa Selu. Yeah, she's originally got a degree from McAllister College here in the Twin Cities, but she also has degrees from Harvard and other places. And she's considered an expert in Coptic Christian and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I had a friend study under her also, and brilliant human being. But during the whole lecture was about antiquity theft and professional antiquity theft, including she cited British Museum examples and, people going to Egypt and just hiding and carrying out very important papyrus, et cetera, and stuff like that. And I think it's really interesting that she did not out the professor, although they had died, but they had an original Dead Sea Scroll that they had on hand and kept in their personal drawer at their own personal amusement for approximately 40 years. Oh, and the point was, is that ethical or not? And she pointed out that a system that's in place academically now that says, well, look, you found something, you discovered it, you deserve the credit, which I do think there should be a fund for that. But her point was that the Dead Sea Scrolls were never supposed to be released to the public. That was done by a very brave person, kind of like an Edward Snowden sort of thing, where they released the Dead Sea Scrolls that were being backed up. They were supposed to be a digital backup. in California, and it got released. And once it got released to the public, when you get citizen scientists and people who have hunches and general memories and can look at documents, so much more research was done when it was released. And there's an academic system now that says, look, you find something, you can hold on to it for 5 years, but after that, you got to release it. But again, there's still the simple fact that whatever you found is literally the story of us. It's our history. It's all of our history. It's not any individual academic institution's story. It's our story. Now, it costs money to store the story. It costs money to maintain it and make sure it doesn't get destroyed. I think every institution needs to be paid. And on top of it, they're not in business to be a charity. Should they make a profit on that? That's up for debate as to how that profit should happen. But at the same time, the research should be open to everyone that wants to research and question it. And that's a different animal. But these examples I'm giving, I think it's important. Not only do we not let archaeologists out in the field be forced to choose between the facts they find and the theories they're supposed to support, but I do think that we need to support finding whatever it is, but tabling it for the whole world to see in a very reasonable amount of time. And I don't think 5 years is it, but maybe that's up for another discussion. I don't know if you're, I like the lighting. How's that going?
My lighting?
Of course. Oh, there you go.
No, I was
Yeah.
answering a chat. Sorry.
No, that's cool.
So, Jared, with all this and the need to switch, the need to break through and let the old guard die off, and hopefully the new people coming forward can break through the barrier that has kept us bound to these old theories, these Victorian theories, and the money that's tied into making sure those theories stay as facts in the field that are being taught to people. So with the idea of that kind of paradigm shift happening, and hopefully it does, how do you think society in general, because I think some of this outside of social engineering is what some of these people have put forward, is this is a great threat to, say, religion, right?
Yeah.
It threatens the idea of God, or it threatens which is of course one of the hands of control here. And so you start looking at the Paracas stuff, you start creating the narrative with these old bones, and then this really intelligent tech that is, and also the age difference in which we've been told for so long how far back it goes, the level of this tech that you always call what we're working with the Blinky board, because
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I'm saying is what has been used so often is that the general masses aren't ready for this kind of revealing. Oh my God, are you texting?
No. The adventure. Well, what are you doing right now?
I was twiddling and talking to you, darling.
I wasn't. I actually was flipping through well, it's besides the point. I got Weeble Wobbles to bid on. I'm on my eBay.
And they don't fall down.
No, they don't. That's another reason to collect them all. No,
Oh,
it's
Lord.
So it's such a crazy question to skirt around, because that's how we have to do it. There are people out there, they're trying to live their lives. They're looking for answers. They're hardworking. They are not trying to figure out the meaning of the universe, and they're good if they don't know all the facts. They have a religious faith, not Christian, not Hindu, not Buddhist. I mean, I'm not talking any particular system. But the issue is people here. Well, I would argue that the elephant in the room is that our entire academic institutions in the West have been Christian based, and there's a church on almost every university and college campus, multiples. and some, of course, some obviously higher places of education are literally based on some particular branches of Christian faith. So they absolutely, there's a marriage at these campuses of religious beliefs. However, you have a lot of people who don't believe in religion, but they're tied to the institutions, and then they're tied to the academic model of out of Africa, Garden of Eden, same thing. We're okay. We can live with you not believing because you still believe in out of Africa. So I think that's one of the elementary anchors that shows a very sly, but a marriage of agreement versus table all the facts, table all the genetic histories, table what we know. And I'm just starting to hear some of the narrative shift on, well, there are reasons because of Neanderthal, Denisovan, and genetic lines that they considered, well, everything came out of Africa. But again, heavily, this is based on the theory of the Garden of Eden, that biblically speaking, that the Garden of Eden must have been around the Tigris, and it must have happened basically, in that area in Africa. And that that's not true, well, the sliver of truth is that it was still out of Africa. And so now there are creationists, not speaking for them at all, but there is this drive to identify that human beings have always been here. So there are people who are not literalists. Okay, so there are literalists who actually believe the Earth is only 6,000 or 10,000 years old. That it started, yeah. So they believe that it's 6,000 or 10,000 years old.
And
that,
flat.
unfortunately, yeah, there's that. But remember, cats would have pushed everything already off.
Correct.
Everything. Yes. So there would be nothing left on the planet if it was flat, because all the big kitties would have rolled it all off. And that's true. So we have religion that is saying, okay, well, if we can prove that humanity was always here, then we're basically proving Adam and Eve, that in the beginning there were only two people, and that we can prove this allegorical story for some to be literal truth, that even if the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, by proving that the Klerksdorp spheres are real, that they are man-made, and they are 3.5 billion years old, it shows that Adam and Eve were playing some really badass ancient golf or something, and they've clearly been humans here from the beginning. So on one hand, you have this creationist group that's willing to say, okay, well, or like there's a book by a very famous professor called The Science of God, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but the whole idea was, again, taking the allegory story of, everything was created in 7 days. But when you look at quantum mechanics and you look at the descriptions that they're using is time stretched. It was stretched out, and that is exactly string theory, quantum mechanics, and that is very easy to show the shape of everything falling within 7 days based on this quantum mechanics of the stretching of the universe and the stretching of time. But there's a whole book on it called, again, The Science of God, and it's all about explaining how that would all work. But so there's this group that says, yeah, we are going to continue to put our foot down and marry our Western belief, Christian belief system, and say the Earth will conform to this book, which is not a book. It is a collection of things. If you want to look it up, the Elohist, the Yahwehist, the Deuteronomist, the Q source, the two source theory. There's like a whole bunch of things, not to mention the Gnostic text, the Book of Enoch, which shows space travel. And there are so many things to look up if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But for us, the point is that it has a great amount of fear for people who only want to understand why grandma's dead and where is grandma. And and people need to know where Fido went and the kitty. And those are comforting things. And it's not that we all don't want those answers, but those that want the religious answers don't come with the narratives that we're talking about. They're uncomfortable for some people, and that's okay. It doesn't need to change your belief system. It doesn't need to change your faith, but your religion and the legalism of it and the way it's written might have to change. And it's also going to have to involve a bigger education to why you believe what you believe, and you need to understand the Septuagints. You need to understand the council. You need to understand what the emperor was sitting down to do with the Roman the empire and creating a state religion, just like, the King James Bible was literally written to define the divine right of kings. I mean, that's just scratching the surface of the whole subject on even whether you're talking King James or the origin of all this. But I'm saying things that people, Elohist, Yahwehist, the Q source, two source theory. I mean, you got to go down these rabbit holes to understand what you're talking about, and then understand the Gnostic texts and a million other things that we're finding, including the legitimate verification of the Book of Judah. We're talking about
Yes.
new information that should make people uncomfortable, and it's not. It's okay to not want. You just have to be able to table facts. It doesn't matter if it fits into your faith. They're just facts, and it doesn't need to be a fact that disproves your faith. They are two separate things. You don't have to change who you pray to, how you pray, because the facts in the ground show humanity here in Mexico 275 to half a million years ago, or because it shows anatomically correct humans 2 or 5 or 60 or 150 million years ago. It doesn't need to do that. And again, for some people, it might say, well, yes, we were here because we were always here in the beginning, and this just proves the point. So for some people, that's okay. But there are other people who are just making it difficult, which is fine as long as you have your opinion, but don't burn the facts. Let everyone look at the facts, and you believe what you want, but don't shut the room out, lock the door and turn the lights out in the room with all the facts. You can we just got to look at it, folks. It's a hard subject there's no going around it. I guess I want to say this in a more apologetic way, but there's no going around looking at the actual information that's in front of us, and being also more informed and realistic about understanding that your religious system and the legalism of it is different than your faith. And on top of it, I've said this from the beginning, that collectively, all of humanity, that there is a collective human consciousness, and it's not just a mechanical backup for all of us. I do think, for what we understand it, that blinky board analogy is that it isn't just a connective backup, mechanical, keep track of everybody system. I do think that this terraformed planet and the way that we connect outside of just humanity, but to all living things, we are literally based in wave and frequency and magnetics. It's not woo woo. I'm talking the physical mechanics of the universe we live in. It is a magnetic frequency, wave, dielectric. It's all the same thing. It's one energy. We are energy-based beings that have a collective consciousness, that do connect outside of the human race to other living things. This is not, whether it was engineered or not, I do believe that it is something that we need to invest in. And if that's through prayer or meditation, it's incredibly important that people continue to do that work, experiment personally with movement and breathing, and continue to connect to that true, real layer of us. But I do think that it needs to come with some responsibility. When you do find things and you're troubled by it, I don't think you should turn from the facts or deny them or burn people at the stake.
Well said. Was it Gerald Schroeder, Science of God? Is that his name? That
sounds right. The Science of God.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't looked at that in a long time, but that's my idea of fun. Like a long time ago, I'm like, string theory. What? Oh, the stretching of time. Yeah. Oh, that sounds interesting. And next thing I know, I'm going from In Search of Schrodinger's Cat to reading that.
And then doing double slit experiments in your house, right?
Yeah, which I think I'm super, super huge fan of Ken Wheeler. And
yes, me too.
Yeah, so his work on the cult of bumping particles and
the fuzzy-haired crackpot.
Yes, fuzzy-haired crackpot, Einsteinian, that to actually and vibrational medicine. I've been really trying to get. I couldn't include all of it in my book, or to really say, okay, here's all the ways that we really were. here's a bunch of facts about structured water and consciousness and how we all really connect. And here's some examples of how we're writing on DNA and writing books and passing down memories and trying to tackle all these subjects, which is why I've decided to move ahead and I need a complementary edition. I had already outlined my next book because I was in South Africa for a month in January and last January, not 3 weeks ago, but last year. And I had outlined the next book right prior to the publication of this one. And I knew that we were going to have to get into these underground rock cut ruins. We were going to have to expand on the sciences of polygonal masonry and engineered soil. And we need to squirm a little more about all academic sciences, that there's clearly a vaster human population just based on the LIDAR scans in Guatemala and them going, well, look, we think there's at least 15 to 20 million people that lived in South America now, not the 5 million busy beavers that came across the Bering Land Bridge and built every South American, Central American, and North American structure since Younger Dryas, that, that archaeologists are now looking at just Guatemala in Central America in 800 square miles. They've been able to say, based on LIDAR scans, we've grossly underestimated the human population. We need to stop looking at South America as if it's where civilization went to die, but it's a place where civilizations were born. And there's a lot of truth in that, because the father of South American archaeology, there were theories that the Garden of Eden was actually in South America, that it wasn't Africa at all, that the origins of our society, that's a whole nother topic. But the idea was that there's a good possibility that humanity did not sprout over there, it sprouted here. But again, we're looking at the snapshot of our landmass now. We have millions of square miles underwater, and 50,000 years ago, the world looked very different. We had very different coastlines. So I think it's really bad to say that we're looking at the stage of the entire play we were watching. But as far as South America goes, it is now with LIDAR showing that if you can go from 6 million people in totality in a theoretical, this is what was in South America, to saying, no, we're looking at 15 to 20 million people just of what we're finding in Guatemala. Well, what are we really saying? I mean, aren't we talking about billions of people when you look at what's being found in LIDAR now, just in Guatemala, is going to expand. And I think the true ancient post Younger Dryas worlds, the dynastic peoples being people that occupied ancient advanced ruins post Younger Dryas or post whatever catastrophe happened 50, 60,000 years ago, that these sites were occupied by tribes or survivors that literally picked up vitrified, broken, shattered societies and mimicked and rebuilt and stacked and mud bricked in where they couldn't cut or move basalt and andesites and granites and of all kinds. They rebuilt temples and pyramids, and they occupied these sites, and they've done it as best they could. But these are clearly sites with super highways and freeways and roads. And what we're seeing in LIDAR, I think, is going to ultimately reveal that we're talking about hundreds or, again, millions to billions of people, that if we start now calculating, and not that they used all the engineered soil for just doing growing food, but again, for filtering heavy metals and carbon dioxide and piezoelectric properties like the Nazca lines or the Jordan Nazca lines or the Bolivian Nazca lines, that this is a society that was global and well connected. And quite frankly, I mean, maritime underwater archaeology is going to give us even more. And it really is going to be a very, very, very different picture of our ancient past. I don't think we really realize I think there's a lot of examples now that show how quickly we're ready to believe in mysticism and magical crap and ignore science, because apparently we've forgotten how.
Because they're calling experimental gene therapy a vaccine.
There's that. And, when you can tell people, I just can't stop coding idiocracy. It's like, it's got electrolytes.
Because
it's got what plants need.
It's got what plants crave.
Yes, that's it. Yes. And that's the problem. It's like, I live in the city where 3M is. I live in the city where if you need to filter a particulate of a particular size and you need to stay safe, OSHA, the EPA, it's all very well established. It's not it's not up for debate. It's not a new science.
Nope.
Wait, you mean 3M doesn't stand for 3 masks?
That's excellent.
3 random masks. It's like this little mask. It's like, is it the house? Is it the mask made of straw? Is it the house made of wood? Is it the mask made of brick? None of which will filter what you need, but it's got electrolytes. It's got what masks crave.
Yes, but what are electrolytes? I just watched that movie like 2 days ago.
It's so, you got to mix that with V for Vendetta, and then you're all set.
You're all set, right? Exactly.
I hope you're not on YouTube, because I think we just said like 18 bannable things.
I know we are. This is YouTube.
We are on YouTube, and I don't give a shit.
I am so.
No,
oh,
we
good. I'm so sorry. We believe everything the government tells us.
Okay.
Now we're doing the they live thing.
So you listen. You follow Ken Wheeler. Do you follow Crow's 777?
I have in the
past.
Not currently.
Okay.
Yes.
He had a frequency healer on recently. You mentioned frequency healing, and I can't remember her name, and I apologize, and I'll look it up and send it to you. But someone you might want to have on your show. She's really interesting. She heals people through their aura, if you will, with tuning forks.
Totally possible. I do think that we're reactivating these different abilities different ways, and it's working, and we need to look at all of those. I mean, vibrational medicine should not be a new frontier. It's something we've been aware of for, there's been solid information and books about it for the last, So homeopathic medicine, I mean, that German scientist gets into it, the like cures like program in the late 1700s. And then and that's just a fraction of vibrational medicine. And it's crazy that homeopathic medicine gets stronger as you dilute the medicine or dilute the essential oil or whatever you're using. And the whole theory of the vibrational energy of the plant is being diluted to then create a cure, where it occurs to me that if you are connected to the soil and you're fully conscious being, and you could connect vibrationally more consciously to then, again, there's something weird about the placebo, the mind effect. And I think what it is if we could connect again with the frequencies of these plants or things that cure us when we crush and destroy them and dilute them, that in the past, we were actually conscious of that connection, and we could use that vibrational information without destroying the plant. That's, of course, I am digressing. So I'm sorry. So that's
digress away.
Well,
I have another, Jared, I had another question kind of springboarding off all this that you had really, the show kind of was revolving around. And it was, if we look at our bodies as bioengineered, right?
Yep.
Like we're looking at Terra Preta.
I'm listening.
Oh, you're trying to hypnotize me now.
Squirrel.
Jared Murphy.
It's a dome of gold.
I love those, by the way. Anyway, so quit with that, with your witchery.
How do you know she's a witch?
She burns.
She weighs more than a duck.
What else floats?
Monty Python is so good. Okay, so if we think about the bio bodies, bioengineered, these are suits, or they could be. You could actually make a case, I think, with the way our biosuits are working and housing us, with the idea of bioships, right? I mean, people are talking about this. And when we look back at the ideas that you brought forward in your book, and other people are bringing forward with Terra Preta and all this kind of stuff, there is something that starts to come together for me in the idea that we know that, okay, so I'm jumping to the spiritual. We know that there's more to us than these bodies, right? Because we dream. we have points of consciousness that happen outside of the body, or at least in theory outside of the body. You can get non-local with stuff. Is there to you a connection between these two, between the idea of terra preta is just an example, just jumping off of, and when we look at our bioorganics that we're walking around in?
Yeah, so we know that there's an exchange of energy when we walk barefoot anywhere on the planet. And I don't think that that's I don't think it's like going back Ken Wheeler and thinking everything is connected, dielectric, magnetic, it's all the same thing, and that it's all one giant system, and saying, well, of course there's a reaction as you put two magnets together, there's a reaction one way or the other, but I think that the structure of the human body, whether it's and viruses and funguses and plants and the soil and animals, I think that the sliver of truth, for instance, in the Bible on, we used to be friends and talk to animals. I think that's a true statement. I think that was a thing. And then the flood happens, and you literally have, prior to the flood, it's, the baby will lay on the snake mound and the cobra won't bite, and everybody's buddies. And then post flood, it's a free for all, eat everybody, and I think that the technology that, again, we get mystical about it. We don't understand why we have a reaction from the blinky board that is actually the control panel to a 747, but we've been banging on it for 1,000 years, and then go, well, it blinks orange or red, but it's a 747, and that's a control panel. It's a plane, and it flies. And I think that's how we've related spiritually to ourselves, where we say, well, there's ghosts. Well, is that a ghost of something? Or is it really an unresolved manifestation externally in the collective consciousness of the conflict you're trying to resolve, that is a truly complex or passionate or violent or some truly frustrating situation that you have accidentally banged on a very complex biological engineered system, and you've manifested this externally in what appears to be paranormal or a ghost, as an example? Or if you're again looking at how do we body or disembody, there is something for computer geeks out there like a RAID array of disks, where what we figured out mathematically is if you have a 5-disk hard drive and you have a software system that basically records to all this hard drives, and if you lose one or two, you're going to make it. You can actually, the theory is that all the disk arrays are redundant to each other, and by copying the code a particular way of any program of any particular document, you are saving as a backup system through this disk array in your operating system. You're basically able to lose a physical hard drive or two and be able to recreate your information without losing all your information. It's a way to create a backup, and
So
it's really
RAID 1 plus 0, right?
Right. So you only do that with humans now.
Well,
And
isn't that what the basics of holography?
I haven't heard the word.
Holograms.
Oh, yeah. So like Burr's work, and you have these the Carillion photography of your aura, and also of, they're doing this work where they photograph a leaf with a hole in it, and they get an image of the leaf with a hole in it, and another hole in it with another leaf, and it literally repeats itself because it's crazy, this vibrational energy pattern of whether it's an unfertilized egg or a seed. It looks like a fully grown whatever it's supposed to be. Magnetically, it has the same signature.
That reminds me of I think it was an experiment where they shined the light of, I forget now. They shined light through like a lizard into a chicken egg, and a lizard grew in the egg, something like that, where they somehow could project the genetics through light into an embryo.
I think that's Burr's work in the 1940s.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think of the next one besides the Carillion photography. There was another Romanian that was doing the same work with the hole in the leaf, and
Okay.
the same magnetic patterns were showing up, and I can't believe I'm blanking out right now, but I think it's because I'm thinking of that last thought just on the idea that in that rate array, I don't want to leave people hanging on this one, because I'm basically saying that the theories of reincarnation, I do think it's quite possible that being each other's backups, that rate array is, at no point are you collectively not recreatable. That through a collective consciousness, I mean, one of the possible theories is right down to organics in the ground, that we can carry the code system over for you
Sure.
or me.
Sure.
And so, I think the frequent example for that was just that in the past, people will always be Cleopatra. They're never like Bill the zookeeper who picked up crap at the Roman zoo. They're never that guy.
Right.
Yeah. And so maybe it's because people are fascinated with these leaders or the past. They do over focus, and they ultimately do tap into that consciousness or that memory, and they go, I was that person. And in reality, they're just tapping into that actual person who's not back on the grid. They're not back on the living grid. There is a total collective like right now, Harvard, they encoded a book in 2008, and now you can encode over a terabyte in a gram of DNA. And again, basically everything humans know, everything we know, can be basically included in 2 giant elephants. And those elephants are still elephants. They're still going out and I'm hungry, I'm going to eat from a tree, but I also know nuclear physics and I'm going to make a quantum jump machine, but not after breakfast. And so we could conceivably figure that at 8 billion people plus living organisms and or these fungal, bacterial, these living organic networks, there's a possibility that when you have a religion that, again, slivers of truths, you have something like, you are reincarnated and you might be a fly, or you might be this, or you might be that. The sliver of truth in it, like the idea of the ark, the theory that maybe the ark was actually genetic, that it wasn't an actual 2x2, irrelevant to proving that you could do it, except for the Far Side Gary, Larson cartoon of the dinosaurs missing the boat, and the idea that it was a genetic arc is a possibility, but that people are thinking along the right lines. The idea now is that what if the rate array is that collective human consciousness, and by carrying over each human over a large course of organic material and what's literally in the air and all of us, that there is a possibility that you get spun back up through we're not gonna, I'd hate to call it reincarnation. Is it a possibility that are we creating new people, or are we recreating a pre-existing society? Are we rebooting someone that is down, or are we just in constant save mode? Which is why so much of our RAM and memory has been put to saving people that have passed, that's why we're down to 10 to 15% consciousness, because what we're identifying as junk genes are really the rate array that's been building up for literally hundreds of thousands of years. And we've been zipping and compacting everyone. Anyway, it's just a theory. It's just
That's
juicy.
That's
I like
juicy.
that. And yeah. I would put it to you that it's stored in the ether.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because I know that's a big, why have we gotten away from just studying the ether, science around ether, calling it the ether. I do think it's pretty brilliant. I'm hoping Ken Wheeler can
break through that one.
Yeah, that and get some 1, 2, 3. Gosh, it took me hours to. I'm not saying I'm an idiot, but it took me a long time to decide how brilliant and his work is as incredible as it is.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time to truly understand it. And
I built one of his magnetic viewers.
How's that? How is it cool?
It's very cool. It's very cool.
Oh, that's so neat. Do you do any videos of it?
No, I can't.
Oh gosh,
it's put away now. But I mean, I could make some. He makes them. I don't need to make them.
Oh, but it's so cool that you actually did it, because I've looked at what he's done and I'm like, oh, and then the experimentation with again, same deal. We know that if we expose to like yeah. So the experiments with plants, exposures to healers, what is the magnetic currents and frequencies happening that healers, they were doing experiments as to, can healers actually heal, and why does it work, and magnetic exposures to unsprouted seeds, and how do plants grow, and how does all that magnetic frequency stuff works. And I'm a big fan of aeroponics and growing with as many nutrients as you can inject into a plant to grow it into its most nutritional value. How does that affect your positive gene expression? I mean, there's a lot to all this. Nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to, it's so bizarre. We have this disconnect with food where, if you own a Ferrari, you never put gas in the oil well, or oil in the radiator fluid, or radiator fluid in the wiper fluid. You would just not do that to your Ferrari. Yet once a week, once a day, because you deserve it, you'll walk out and hit that Ferrari with a sledgehammer. That's how we treat the human body. It's like, well, am I hitting it on the hood today or right on the engine block? And I deserve it. I'm going to live my life, and I deserve to hit that Ferrari. Well, mostly you want to drive the Ferrari and look like you're in the Ferrari, and have fun with the Ferrari for its design purposes. Yet we have this huge disconnect in this broken time frame where we look at food as not just a comfort, but we're concerned with how it tastes, not where's my gene expression for the very day, and when do I need to eat, drink, what are the nutrients, electrolytes, what are the things that my body actually craves, and is it coffee with you at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. with heavy cream, or is it actually what appears to taste like that? But based on a quick scan at the Future Cafe, it's actually containing some repair nanobots, working on some mitochondria reprogramming that seems to be a wire with maybe some cancer forming, and also you're going to go work out.
Fix those telomeres, baby.
And when you talk like that, I just want to go shop at an organic market and put my hand through my Euro mullet and talk sociology.
I think mine are growing all right now. Those tips are getting better.
My dendrites are getting brushier.
That's it.
I got some questions from the Peanut Gallery for you.
Oh, wait. Do they like being called the Peanut Gallery?
Yes.
Do we put on Charlie Brown music now? Can we do the dance on it? Yeah.
So I don't quite understand the question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
2 trains leave a station, one from Coopersville at 60 miles an hour. I hate those questions.
You have one bucket with 5 gallons. Another bucket with 3 gallons. How many buckets do you have? No.
Yes. Electrolytes.
Do you think that Antiquitech, architecture and artifacts, are functional or potentially so?
So like the idea of smart buildings, like these high courts and keystone connected buildings, like actually having like communication qualities and stuff like that.
I have no idea what he means.
Well, I think that's something that, haven't talked about it yet, or what we're doing, but for sure that you have a structure, these polygonal structures. It's like, oh yeah, they worked with earthquakes, but it's not just that simple. We have keystone cuts, which are metal connecting points between blocks that are 100, 800 tons, 50 tons, whatever. There's no need for it. They're not going to go anywhere. You can't put a credit card between them. You can't put a pin. So why do this? And then deep into the soil, one of the things that I'm advocating is to test the core. Because when we build a modern building, we don't dig, like in Minnesota, we have a frost footing. So all of our footings for buildings are 4 feet, or they go deeper, in which case we pre-compact the soil, the mud, the clay, whatever the hell it is. And then we put some class 5 and we compact that down. And then we have a couple layers, and then we build a foundation. And then 100 years later, it's like literally lopsided. Yet here are, even for dynastic periods, polygonal buildings that are sitting literally millions of pounds are sitting on, some of it's bedrock, but some of it's foundational. The question is or is it really rock, or have they pre-compacted soils to either 100% or more? Have they used geopolymers? Have they used multiple layers, just like they brought granites or stones from thousands or hundreds or 2 miles below and 75 miles over, depending on the site, whether it's in the Andes or whether it's Egypt and Aswan Quarry? Is it possible that they built the very foundational structures of these buildings on a combination of what's called seismic metamaterials, which not only helps control down to the nanosized particle earthquake control, but it's also part of that engineered soil. So not only are we measuring in the ground and over and saying these two tectonic plates are going to create this frequency, and when it gets to that building, we need to have this shape of polygonal. Excuse me. I think I might have to grab some water. Can you hold on?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Who do we have next week, Jer?
Next week we have Meredith.
Oh, excellent.
I don't know her
Yes.
last name.
Swain.
Meredith Swain.
Yeah. I've had her
Meredith's
on my
Lucky
show.
Stars. Yeah.
Yeah, she's an astrologer and recently kind of saw some of the underpinnings of the social engineering last year.
I just got an email from Derek Burrows too. He's going.
Sorry about that.
That's cool. Derek Burrows from I forget.
Okay. So I think, are we good?
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay. Yeah. So the idea is, could these buildings be connected to the surrounding terra preta or other engineered soils? And irrelevant to earthquake, are they? I'm going to keep drinking.
It's always a good plan.
Do you need a test?
There's an anal swab station right down the street.
You guys have an extreme form of things, I guess. Let me ask you a
We're
question.
Right. We're up to date here.
But
like
yeah,
Kansas
I do
City.
think that. Yeah, I do think the buildings were connected, not just for the sake of earthquake control, but the structures themselves would have been part of that piezoelectric network that, on a very, very low frequency level, could easily transmit ones and zeros. And it's not a technology we're familiar with, or we're assuming that it was in the ground. It could have been information from, again, what we identify as a biological network. So a fungus, a bacteria living and working within the soil system that was part of a root system that's part of a tree system. And remember, the worldwide tree system were not the scrub trees or the 100-foot trees we have now. They were sequoias, metasequoias, redwoods that were like Hyperion, that's 380 feet tall. That network, that tree system spanned from not just California, where they're still living, but all through Siberia. I mean, pretty much every continental area was very, very, very big trees, and a society that can cut and move stone. What they could do with trees would have been incredible. And
cool. And mycelium,
that's
mycelium too.
Well, and plastics, metals, all that's gone. So we look at these large polygonal structures and we go, well, they knew how to move really, really big and complicated blocking, but oh well, they stopped there.
And we can't do it today.
No, we can't. And we have Flinders Petrie's work. We have the work from Egyptologists that are like, well, it's a mystery. But Flinders Petrie's work, even back in the day, there they are. You're looking at core drills that are hundreds of times faster than anything we can do today. Yep. As a historical remodeler, I deal with granite companies. I see their wet saws, their water jet cutters, their CNCs. It's incredible. Just to make a countertop right now, just to make a flat piece, 1-inch thick granite.
Right. They have like a diamond, basically a diamond flap disc that mills it down. But yeah, I totally see that. And just even up to the Romans, I think it was Hadrian, had moved giant blocks of stone up into the northern Europe, which is crazy.
Yeah, and the issue is, it's not just that they're big stones, it's the complexity of the cuts.
Yes.
That's where you start to lose Okay, it's not people just moving big stones. It's the complexity of the work itself. And often what never gets brought up, like at Baalbek, Lebanon, they bring up some of the quarry stones that are 1,200 tons.
Mhm.
That never made it to the site, which is like 3 kilometers or 3 miles away.
Mhm.
But then there's the ones that are in Baalbek, and Baalbek clearly looks restacked. I mean, anybody who builds anything, you're looking at a restacked structure. And what's interesting about that is that there were pillars on site. Yes, the dynastic peoples, the Romans, it was a Hellenistic temple or whatever, the Greeks, the Romans were there. But what they don't talk about are the 60-foot tall hundreds, I think it was up to over 200 columns that were single piece, 60-foot columns made out of the hardest stones on earth, perfectly hewn, and they're 60 feet tall and they're massive. And there are columns like that all over the world, along with obelisks that have very crazy frequency and tuning capabilities, where even broken sections of obelisks, they appear tuned. They ring like bells, just like Tesla said. They are some sort of either receiving and or sending or both. And again, it just doesn't add up. If you look at the devices we have today to build these things, we can't build not even close to what they were building in size and scale, but the complexity of every single side of these geo pieces, these complex Lego pieces are not replicatable. We can't do it. And that should concern people about saying, well, how much technology do they really have? Well, it wasn't just all rock, it wasn't like a super fancy, Fred Flintstone in a white collared shirt going, welcome to our advanced stone cutting society. That's all we figured out.
Right. That's the the basics of their society, of their technology.
Yeah, and I don't think you develop into that level. You don't build megalithically if you're not planning on surviving multiple catastrophes. And again, we're also looking at the bases of the structures. What was on top? Were they using wood? Were they using those 60-foot diameter, 380-foot tall redwoods? Were they cutting those into place? I mean, again, dynastically, the places have been repaired. They've been mutated. They've been restacked. But fortunately, we have places where there's literally piles of mud-bricked, multi-ton megaliths still laying in situ that apparently no academic institution has the balls to dig up. I'm throwing it down. It pisses me off to no end, but I'm hoping we can change that.
The gauntlet is down.
Yeah. Have some balls, pick it up, get out from behind your desk and stop worrying about finding mummies and gold and jewels and start looking at how did they build these foundations? How is it pre-compacted? What are the levels of materials? Is it a 40-foot pre-compacted foundation? Is it on bedrock, or does it appear to be bedrock, but is it really some sort of geopolymer, or is it 100% compacted soil? Is it, again, multiple layered? These are things that we don't know about these megalithic walls. And I'm planning work with an archaeologist, and she's like, Jared, no one's ever looked at stuff like this. I've talked to Mohammed Ibrahim in Egypt, and he's like, Jared, no one's looked at stuff like this. Now everyone's wanting to find the mummy. It's not sexy to talk soil.
Right.
It is though, and these are the green doors, and this is what we need. This is what's going to be behind the green door. But on this note, we do need to wrap, and your voice is shot, darling. So
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened.
well,
You talked for 2 hours straight.
Yeah, your voice is timed with the show anyway. So
It's all good. It's all good. It's been great having you. Do you want to plug your stuff before your voice gives out?
Oh, stuff. Yeah, look, notaliens.com. So yes, I will be able to send you a book signed by me if you'd like. I actually go to the post office and do it. Feel free to look there. If you're international, it does cost more, but send me an email. We'll make it happen. My book's on Amazon. I have more private exclusive data for members if you want to join the site. I also send out free books. And then I will be on the Forbidden Knowledge News Conference first weekend in April. I'm the keynote on Friday. And then I think I'm part of the conference on Saturday also for a big group thing, but that's coming up in April. And you can always find me co-hosting on Conflict Radio. We have stuff coming up tomorrow night, and we do live the last Thursday of every month. And of course, there's this thing called the Cosmic Salon.
I just put our last one out yesterday, and then I get to see you again on Tuesday.
Yes. So we are, you're going to want to look for me on the Cosmic Salon more because, well, friendly banter and all. That could be a whole nother section. Behind the blue door.
Right. When we slip into something a little bit more easy.
Well,
alrighty then.
There's a way to close it out. Were there any more questions? I really appreciate everybody listening live. Was there?
There was one more question about, where was it? What Weeble Wobble sets did you have?
Oh, you know what I'm really upset about is losing my Star Wars collection. I had the original card series that I collected as a 5-6-year-old that I would go to the store and the choice was, do you want candy or do you want Star Wars cards? And I always took Star Wars cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then that collection ended up in storage along with a bunch of things when I was moving, and everything out of that garage was stolen.
Oh.
And
oh my God, that is terrible.
Yeah, so it's not that the cards couldn't be replaced or can't be. It was the fact that these are the cards that I collected as a kid, just going to the little corner grocery store. And eventually, I didn't have a complete set. It was just all the memories with it, right? So that was the collectible that after that, I was super bummed. That happened in like 2006, 2007. But
that's too bad.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Jared. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Hope we can do it again sometime. And thank you, Nish. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Be sure to tune in next week. We have a Nox Mente with Meredith Swain. Swain, was it?
Yes.
Yes, Meredith Swain. Astrologer lady?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Should be good. We got some good shows lined up for March. So keep listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, and I got to say, who wanted me to say this? Shit, Amanda. Whoever missed me saying the Obelisk. So, welcome to the Obelisk. So, good night.